guys, and welcome back to my channel. I'm back with my March plan with me, and as you can see here, I've got a couple of notebooks, which means there's going to be a couple of moving parts that I'm going to show you guys. So just to kind of give you an idea, I have my A6 Leuchtturm. This is my experiment for March, which I will show you guys later because I've actually already set up March in here. I have my personal bullet journal, so my normal setup and all of that, and I will show you guys February as well. I also have my language journal because I thought that I would go ahead and show you guys what I ended up doing in February and show you how I'm going to set up for March, which is going to be super, super simple. So let's get started. First up, let's take a look at how February went. So hold on, gotta find the front of my month. Whoops. So here is my February intro page. I'll do a kind of quick flip through to show you guys how the month went. So my monthly definitely got a lot of use out of here. I'm on holiday this last few days in February and the first 2 weeks in March, so I'm gonna try and work on getting some of these open tasks filled out. This month has just been kind of crazy in general, so. Then I've got my memories and my February goals. So you'll see I've almost filled up my memories. I have a little bit of space left for the last couple of days, and I've gotten a couple of my goals filled out. I need to work on those still, and anything that I don't actually finish that still needs to get done is going to get migrated to March. You can see my reading goals and my tracking. So reading, I did really well in January. February, not so much. Tracking has been going well as well. This entire section here where I've got a bunch of blank space is for things that actually I don't do every single day. I just track them. So some of these are things that I'd like to track in the sense of I want them to become a habit and something I do every day. And certain things are things that I track in the sense of I just want to know when I actually do these things. So that's why there's a lot of blank space here. If we're being honest, this section I just didn't get to this month. And I am going to go ahead and change up how I'm doing this in March. So you guys will see kind of how that has been adapted. And then as always, I have my money goals, and I have this legend of stuff for my language journal, which I ended up moving into my language journal, so I won't be rewriting this for March. And then we get into weeklies and dailies. So since I had work and all of that, I've been using my standard weekly and daily setup. I've been really working on only putting things on my dailies that I know I'm going to be getting to. So I've been able to fit more and more dailies on on a single spread, which has been kind of nice because that means that this journal will last me a little bit longer and I won't have to do that front of journal migration quite as frequently. But it also does mean that I tend to have an extra page. So I've been doing fun little collections on them. So this one was a best K-drama lines. A lot of the K-dramas have been fan subbed, which means that they're really well done, but sometimes the turns of phrase are a little bit weird in English, but they're also like kind of beautiful and also sometimes funny. So I have a couple of my favorites that I like to keep track of here. Then week 6, kind of chugging along. I have my stuff to do for university. This might give you an idea as to my mindset when I actually made the spread. I was not feeling particularly motivated, and you guys will even notice this spread, I used my color coding color specifically for university. Yeah, just we'll leave it at that. So lots of things I need to work on during the holidays. Got another weekly, some more dailies, and you might actually notice that, for example, this was last week and I migrated a couple of things and then some I just kind of left. That does not mean that there are open tasks that I haven't done anything with. That just means that I got too lazy to migrate them because I was sick that week and I didn't really get very much done. So yeah, that's why you'll see a couple of open tasks on there, but this is actually completed. I don't have to refer back to the spread. They are where they need to be. I just didn't actually check them off. More dailies. You'll see I actually got 6 days on here, which this one, for example, if I have stacked tasks, so for example, I have a main thing and then I have things I need to do for them. When I indent, a lot of times if I have to migrate them, I just migrate the top one and I don't even worry about these bottom ones because it's less writing to do and I know that I had to do the top one, so the whole thing has been migrated. Then I had a quick little tracking. So I actually had this twice. I forgot about that. So here, I had my first little Paris spread because I actually did 2 day trips to Paris this month. So I just did a quick little thing when my trains were, what I wanted to bring, all that kind of stuff. And then I did the same thing on here. This was a bullet journal related one, so I actually had more stuff that I wanted to bring. And then just Sunday at the end right there. I have this creative stuff spread. So I had a couple of things floating around in various lists of creative type things. So art or crafting or what have you. So I just made a little list right here to work on. Then this is this week, so we are currently on Saturday. This is also the first week that I started using, oops, let's see if I can find it. This is the first week I started using the 0.4 point erasable Muji pen, and I actually was planning to use this for March. However, playing around with it this week, I realized that the thinness of the Leuchtturm paper means that sometimes when I erase, even if I'm careful, it erases the stuff on the other page. And I want this to be a record that I have for the long term, so I don't want it to erase itself, basically. So I've actually decided to change which everyday writer I'm going to use in March, but this was my week that I experimented, and I have to say I really do like it. It's got this kind of gray black because it's the erasable ink, and it's a really nice fine pen. So I am still going to use it in my A6 bullet journal. I'm just not going to use it in here. So you'll see I still have a bunch of tasks open because I haven't gotten to them. I have a lot going on for next week because I basically put anything that I could push off until my holidays. I decided to do that because I just wasn't feeling well again this week, so that's why there's a ton of stuff in my upcoming week box there. Then we are up to dailies. So I have up to today, and you'll see I have a couple of open tasks from things I didn't get to during the week. We'll see if I get them today or not. If not, no big deal, because I basically have decided that I'm taking this weekend to relax and try and finally kick the last little bit of this cold that I have. So we have today, and I have my little thing that I'm officially on holiday for the next 2 weeks. So I left one more page for Sunday because I don't think I'm going to fit Sunday in there. That's just not enough space. So I've got plenty of space in here, and if I have extra space, I might do a doodle or who knows what, or I'll just leave it blank. I also, since I knew I was going to have this extra page, did a get it done spread, which is essentially the things that I'd like to focus on during the holidays. So I have things for work, things for university, and personal. And I did actually label them using the color code colors that I use on my CALENDEX. You'll see I have work, university, and personal. So I just threw that on there, and then for certain ones where I had already made a full spread of things I needed to do, I just referenced the page. So for the university, I referenced page 69, which was this spread. For personal, I referenced page 75, which was my creative stuff spread. And then of course I have other things kind of on top of that. But I wanted to make sure that I didn't forget to look back at those spreads that I had previously made. So that was February. Let's take a look at March. So obviously, oh well, maybe not obviously, but because there are only 3 more days left in February next week, I'm going to go ahead and put that weekly in March. So I basically, after this spread, flip the page and immediately I'm going to go into March. I did do a little bit of pre-planning in pencil, so let me go ahead and show you my layout for March before we get into how I've set it up in my notebook. So I decided that I'm going to go minimalist for March. When I was in Paris last weekend, I was hanging out with Brown VOODOO, so Sarah, The Boosted Journal, Ricardo, and Minimal Plans, Claire, and I was really inspired by our discussion, and I was really inspired by seeing Claire's bullet journal, which is super, super minimalist. And you guys know that every once in a while, you know, I don't do a ton of crazy stuff in my journal. I tend to have pretty simple spreads. If I have something that I like, I stick with it. I will use color for the headers just to kind of make them stand out, but I don't really doodle. I don't really, you know, I avoid using a ruler as much as possible. So I have a fairly minimalist style as is, but once in a while I like to go in and just do a completely minimalist, you know, kind of minimal use, minimal pens, minimal design, all of that kind of stuff. And so I was inspired for March to try that again. So what I did is I went through and I decided, okay, my colors are obviously going to be black and gray, and I decided what pens I wanted to use for my spreads. So the reason, you'll see, I'm going to start actually with my spreads. The reason that I only have 4 microns is because this is what's left over from my old pack of microns. I do have a new pack, but I'm using up the ink in these guys. And I had 2 that I was getting ink coming out of the top here. And so because it was getting really messy and it was just they were getting to be unreliable, I threw those 2 pens away. So I'm left with 4. So I have the 005, 01, 03, and 08. So that means that I got rid of the 02 and the 05. So I decided that I was going to use these pens as the pens that I'm going to use for my spreads. Now, I am still going to use microns just because I like that once I write them, once I put them on the page, even if I erase over them or if I do tombos over them, they don't smear. So I'm not maybe as minimalist as I could be, but I thought that that was a sacrifice that I was willing to make in order to have spreads that weren't going to smear on me, because otherwise when I use gel pens, it's kind of a hazard. And me being a lefty, I really need to minimize the smearing where I can. So these are going to be my main the main pens I'm going to use for various spreads. I am mostly for my mini monthly calendars and in my weeklies, I am going to use these 2 gray Staedtlers. These are ones that I keep all the time in my bullet journal, so they're just kind of normal pens that I have around, and I tend to fall back on them a lot when I want to have a little bit lighter writing, so I'm going to use those. I did choose 1 brush pen that I'm going to do. So I have this calligraphy pen by Tombow, and it's got a black brush pen and a gray brush pen. So I've got 2 in 1 basically. Now, I did mention that I was originally going to use this as my everyday writer. You'll see I even wrote it in here. However, due to the transfer, I'm going to save this as my everyday writer in my A6, which I'm going to go ahead and explain the A6 at the end of my time lapse. So I will try and remember to put in timestamps for you guys, so if you want to jump straight ahead to that. But I will still use this. I'm just not using it in my A5 bullet journal. Instead, I am going to use this 0.38 as my everyday writer. What I've been noticing lately is that a 0.5 is getting to be just a little bit too big for how I'm writing right now. I'm writing smaller and smaller. Just one of those things. Maybe later I will go back to writing bigger, but for now I'm finding that having a finer point when I write is really helpful. So I'm going to go ahead and use this 0.38 and hope that the transfer isn't quite so bad, because this is not an erasable pen, but it is still a black gel pen and it is still from Muji. So I also have my 0.25, that is another gel pen that I use for some small writing. For example, when I fill in my tracker, a lot of times I'll use this one to write in the headers because I write them very small, and this is the finest point pen that I have. So these are the pens I'm using. I'm keeping it to 7 pens, and if we're being truly honest, I'm going to basically use these for setting up spreads and these for my mini monthly calendar. So my main pens, if I'm going to do any lettering, are going to be in this calligraphy pen, and any main writing is going to be in here. So on a day-to-day basis, I'm really only going to be using 2 pens. Just for the setup, I still have a couple going on there. So I also, for the setup, but I don't actually write in my bullet journal in these, I have my pencil and my eraser, but I didn't really count those in what I'm using because these are just kind of standard tools, and I don't, like I said, I don't actually write in my bullet journal with these aside from doing my spread setup. So moving on, we have my little setup like I always do for my spread. So I am still going to do a quote. I chose to do this quote by Nathan W. Morris. It's "Edit your life frequently and ruthlessly. It's your masterpiece after all." And I thought that that was really fitting for a minimalist spread, because I'm really kind of taking it back down to what do I really need? What are the things that are really important in my setup? And I'm hoping that this experiment will show me if there are things that I'm using that I really don't need to use, or if there's things that I want to change and what have you. So I thought that was a really fitting quote. I am going to do, so the quote on this first page here, and March 2018 on the second. I am going to keep my calendar, my monthly spread, basically the same way, because that has been working very well for me. Ditto the memories goals, reading goals, and tracking. Those are basically as pared down as I can make them, so I am going to hold on to them kind of as is. And yeah, that's basically my setup, guys. So what I'm going to go ahead and show you is, oops, I have gone ahead, oh, and actually you'll notice this little section here was me counting out to find the middle of my page. That was just the only reason I had that in there. So I am not going to brush letter my quote this time around. I'm actually going to just do it in a thin micron, and I'm going to do it centered in the page, and I'm also going to center March 2018 in the page as well. I did go ahead and block out my calendar. The rest I haven't really touched, but I wanted to make sure I had my setup. And I am centering the calendar a little bit more. What I've been doing, because of the way the normal Leuchtturms are, they have one less line, and so I had been skipping in one but leaving a space here for the month. But I have a couple of extra spaces, so this month I'm going ahead and centering it directly and just I'm just going to deal with it like that, and I'm just going to write March up here in this small section. Next up, we have memories goals, reading goals, and tracking. The only thing I set up is I did the top of my tracker, so I have 31 days, so I just went ahead and did the top so I could just directly count in there. You'll notice I don't even have the stickies in here. I haven't done anything because I'm going to do very, very simple spreads in here. Now, before I go ahead and time lapse you guys, I want to go ahead and show you guys in my language journal so that when I go ahead and set up for March, you will know what I'm going to do. So I have in here my language legend, my study legend. I do have the sticky note if I want to recopy in page 46 and 47 of my regular bullet journal, which was this spread. I still haven't decided, so the sticky note's still there because I still haven't copied it. I have my intro page here, and then I have my to-do list, so I wanted to get some song lyrics, and the one I have left on here is to get one in German, so I just left that there. And then I've got my index. So the way I actually did my index is I have this left column for just a page by page index, and then I have this right column for journaling. So I'm splitting it up by language, and I basically am writing in the language as I journal in it, and I'm leaving a couple of lines in between. So I'll just do a comma after, at next page, I'll just do a comma and write the next page number there, but that way I know where I've journaled in which languages and on which pages. Then I've got my February, what's this called? My February log, that's what that is. And you'll see that I have been pretty good about filling it out. So I am going to drop the language section in my personal bullet journal on my tracker and just go directly in here because a lot of days I actually do multiple things and multiple languages. So I like to have more space. So I'm actually just gonna leave this set up exactly the way it is. I will just do a new one for March. I have this word of the day, which I only had a couple of days, so I'm actually going to drop this for March. And yeah, if I need it again in the future, I'll go ahead and do that, but that's fine. And then these were the pages I had for February. So I have a couple of journaling entries in here. I have lyrics, so songs that I have printed out and taped in here. And then in Korean, I'm actually recopying it to practice my handwriting. And then I need to go through, what I'd like to do is go through and mark the words that repeat and look those up so that I learn some new vocabulary. Basically, I haven't really finished this as you can probably tell, but I wanted to have it in here so that I could work on it when I had some time. And then I have the end of the lyrics here as well as the English translation down here. I have a song that I really like in Italian to work on translating that. I also have a song that I like in Arabic. I'm probably going to do the same thing that I did for Korean, where I will recopy the lyrics to work on handwriting and then go back through and pick out words that I know and look up other words to try and expand my vocabulary. Then I've got my last journaling entry. So what I'm going to do is I will actually set up March over here, but I will keep working on journaling until I fill up the page, just so that I use up all available space. So this I will do at the end, but I will do that as part of the time lapse so you guys can see that. So I'm going to go ahead and time lapse you guys and do my setup, and I'll come back at the end and walk you through everything. All right, guys, so that was my setup, and you'll notice that, as pretty much always happens when I have done a pre-planning, what actually gets put on paper is not exactly what I had explained in my setup. And the big thing with this, everything was pretty much the way I had envisioned it, except that as I was going through, I realized that I had given myself too many pen options for a minimalist month. And in the end, I only ended up needing 3. Of course, this isn't counting my pencil and my eraser because those are part of, those get erased. But for actually drawing my spreads, I only ended up needing 3 pens. So I used my 01 and 005 microns, so essentially the 2 smallest microns that I have. And I also used the black side of this calligraphy pen. So, just goes to show that even when I think I'm being minimalist, I give myself too many options. But you know what? And I have to say, I really like how this came out. I know it's a big departure from what I normally do, but I have to say I'm pretty pleased with it. So you'll see here that I have my quote centered in the middle, and the quote actually took me longer than I thought it would because I did not pre-count how many letters were in each word so that I could do my spacing. So I actually had to do that kind of off screen as I was going on, which is why that took me a little longer for all that it's a very, very simple quote. But I love how simple this is. Like, I don't know, I really like how this came out. Next, we have the monthly, and you will see that I messed up and I had to do whiteout, and it's actually, I turned the page before it had dried, and so I've actually smudged it a little bit, but you know what? It is what it is. So I have just my standard setup here. You'll notice that I do label the weeks, but I don't label Monday through Sunday, mostly because I'm lazy, but I do actually label the weeks on my weekly, so that's why I put those in. So I still have my same headers as always, and you'll notice that I did use the brush pen, but I just did standard print because for this month, even doing just like plain calligraphy seemed too fancy, if you will. I don't know, it's just not really the look that I was feeling for this month. So I went ahead and I just did very simple headers. And yeah, same as usual, I kind of counted out, but I'm not even sure if it's centered. Yeah, we're just gonna kind of run with it. Then I have my memories. Now, the one thing with the memories that I might end up doing later, and I'm going to kind of hold off and see how it goes, is a lot of times I'll do that line up at the top and at the bottom to kind of frame the page, and I didn't do it here. I'm not sure yet if I'm going to, so I'm going to leave it as is, but basically just did the headers for these two. I will wait and do my March goals once I hit the end of the month because I might get to some stuff, this weekend or at the beginning of the week, so I don't want to migrate things that I'll have ended up finishing, but it's most likely going to be, I will probably just use a box or something. I'm going to do something really simple. I probably won't even do colors on there, so you guys will end up seeing this on Instagram whenever I fill that out. I have my reading goals, so same as always, and I can go ahead and fill in the goal as 6 books. I just haven't done that yet. And then tracking over here, you'll notice that between February and March, I reduced the number of things I'm tracking. So I had quite a lot of things going on here, and I realized that I didn't need all of them, that I didn't want all of them, and so I simplified. So I only have, 5 different things that I'm going to be tracking on here. I do have room if I want to add later on in the month. I tend to do that just because a lot of times when I'm setting up, I have this idea in my head of how it's going to go, but midway through the month, I might change my mind. So I like to give myself a little bit of space. And then I also have my money goals over here. So again, very simplified. My goal is to save 30% of my income this month. So once I kind of figure out what my income is going to be, I will write that number in. And then I am still planning on doing a cash diet for groceries. This just helps me to kind of keep track of how much I'm spending on groceries. I think it's more of a mental thing. I don't know if it really makes a difference, but it feels like it does, so I'm just kind of sticking with it. And then as always, I have that box for how much I actually save. So, my goal is always to do whatever I've labeled up here, but at the end of the month, I do go back through and I say, okay, how much is actually currently still in my savings account that I moved over for this month? And because it's the end of the first quarter, I wanted to do a little check-in for how I was doing, because if you guys remember, My goal for 2018 is to save $10,000, which means that at the end of the first quarter, in theory, I should have saved $2,500. So I want to see how close I am to that, how much more I need to try and make up. So just kind of for my own reference. So that is my March setup in here. I will go directly in with a weekly. I'm not setting that up right yet because since I am doing a minimalist month and since I am on vacation, I might play around with my setup. We shall see, but at least now I am all ready for the month. So let's take a look at the other things that I set up. First up, I want to do my language journal because that's going to be very quick. Oops. So you'll see my February setup here. I just went ahead and I did a very, very simple March setup. I used the same pens that I did in my bullet journal. That is my language journal all set up for March. And finally, the thing that I am probably most excited about is this A6 bullet journal. So I know a lot of you are going to say, well, isn't that a lot of work because you have two? Yes, that is probably true, which is one of the reasons why, one, I chose to do March as a minimalist month, which means that my entire goal for the month is to spend as little time actually drawing spreads in my bullet journal and as much time as I can actually being productive, essentially. And so I am also going to keep a minimalist setup in here. And I mentioned before that I did already set this up because it's such a different size than what I'm used to. I didn't want to have to screw around with that on camera. So I just went ahead and set it up. I was inspired. So I will show you what I've done in here and kind of explain how I think, or how I hope it's going to work. So first up, I have a couple of blank sticky notes in here so that I can make lists on the go. It's just one sheet thick for all of them because I didn't want to bulk up this notebook too much. And then I just did my name and my Sunshine and Stationery email. Then I have my index. So in this notebook, I have been using this pen. So this is what I have been using to fill in my index, so I can actually erase and rework if I need to. But you'll notice I just started directly in on March. So we have a quick little March intro page, and because of the size, I went ahead and I just did the calendar on here because I decided to try a standard March log. So if you saw this on my Instagram, you will have seen it before I actually filled anything in, but I figured I started filling everything in and I thought it would be good to show you guys how that's kind of coming up. So I have not yet put in anything from April. I've got a couple of things on my CALENDEX that'll end up moving, but I haven't moved any of that. I did, however, start doing my log. So I filled in all of my work. I did my same sideways setup here for my vacation. This is a trip that's coming up. And you'll notice that I initially started out where I did one letter per box, which is my standard way of writing in my regular bullet journal. And then I ended up changing it. So what I've been doing, and you guys are going to laugh at me because I still am kind of keeping it structured, I'm doing 2 letters per box. I know, I'm ridiculous. But that way I can fit in more, it's a little bit closer together, and so you can see where I did it on a couple of things over here that they're more close together. I didn't feel like going back and erasing all the things I had already done, which is why those are still super spaced out, but at least that's going to be the plan for in here. Then I did tasks. So rather than in my regular bullet journal, you guys know I have my happy mail, my upcoming month, my tasks, and my emails. I just did all of them as one in here because one of the things that I figured was this is my on-the-go bullet journal, which means I'm not going to put any happy mail stuff in here. I'm not going to do probably any emails unless they are actually urgent. So it's really going to be tasks, things that I think of that I need to do for the month. Then I've also got another March goal set up, and I've already got 2 things labeled in here. This is most likely going to be a truncated list based on what I've got in my full bullet journal. Again, I did duplicate a lot of my normal spreads because I really wanted to see, part of the reason I'm doing this is to see if at some point in the future, I might try and just solely bullet journal in an A6 size bullet journal, or even in a B6 or a B5 or whatever, like the slightly larger one is, to see if having a slightly smaller bullet journal was at all feasible for the way that I plan. So that's why I went ahead and I did my full monthly setup in here, even though it really and truly is just, it's a duplicate of what I have in my A5. We'll see how much I actually fill out. But yeah, that was the reason why I have the full setup in here. So I do have March memories. I went ahead and I gave a full spread. This one, as I was kind of thinking about it, I think I probably should have just done one page and then just done like bullet points or done a log or something like that rather than doing the full, because I am going to have my nicer lettered memories in my A5 size bullet journal. But again, I was just kind of playing around with this to see how it would work. So this is how I have it in here. Next up, I have reading. So you'll notice that I did not do my goal, met, start, end. I just went straight ahead and did the books. And at the bottom, I left a space so that I could write down how many total books I read. That was basically as simplified as I could make this particular spread. Then I have my tracking. I do have the exact same things that I'm tracking in my A5 as I have in my A6. I just had to make 2 columns because I didn't have enough room to actually fit 31 days. There's only, I think it's like 26 or 28 squares tall, so I can't fit a full month. Even if it was February, I couldn't fit a full month. And then I also have a money goals down here, and it is exactly the same as what I have. I have the save 30% with my approximated amount, cash diet, and first quarter. I didn't do my March saving because I'll do that in my A5 bullet journal. And the next thing I did in here was I played around with a weekly setup. So I'm kind of in luck next week. So I am going to start using this next week. I'm in luck next week because I'm on holiday, which means that I don't need to have all of the moving parts that I normally have in my weekly setup. So I went ahead and I have one page where I've got my my weekly, so Monday through Sunday, and I did split the weekend into 2, and I have a task section and an upcoming week section. So you'll see that this follows the sections that I tend to have in my 1-page weekly in my A5 bullet journal. I just did it on a full spread, and it's a lot smaller. And then I'm going to go directly into dailies. So I have a feeling that this particular notebook is going to be much more useful for me in terms of dailies and in terms of like quick collections on the go and that sort of thing, because for example, when I go to work, I have a ton of stuff that I bring with me, and I've been realizing that a lot of times I'm leaving my bullet journal at home because even though I'm going to be working on stuff during my breaks, I just don't want to lug that much more weight with me up to school because I'm already carrying so much. So my goal is that, you know, when I go to work, for example, instead of taking my full bullet journal, I'll take these 2, and that's, you know, much smaller, much lighter. It's a lot more portable. I can throw it in my bag and it's easy to go. So if I have things that come up and I need to rapid log, I can just directly do it in here. The other, like I mentioned before, the other thing that I'm looking at is whether or not this size is at all feasible for me as a main personal bullet journal. I'm not sure, so that's why, you know, I have all of my spreads in here. That's why it's going to be a bit of a duplicate this month. However, like I said, I am doing a minimalist bullet journal or a minimalist setup in here, as well as a minimalist setup in my A5 to try and minimize the time. You know, since I'm now keeping up with 2, I want to minimize the amount of time I'm spending on both of them, and I'd like to see how it works. So that is my setup for March. I have made a lot of changes in terms of the aesthetics of my setup, not so much in terms of the content, but I really wanted to take this month to play around. You know, I've been using the same system for a while now, and I wanted to see if there are just, you know, if there are any ways that I could tweak it and make it more effective for me than it already is. So if you guys have any comments or questions, or if you're in an A6 bullet journal and you have any tips or tricks for me, I would love to hear it down in the comments section. So go ahead, leave comments and questions down below, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.